amphibians, including the golden toad of Costa Rica and the gastric broad frog of Australia.
I don't think there's a species of animal out there that doesn't have something endangered.
No, I don't think there is, but...
Now, I mean, like, we need to stop helping things become endangered, but some things just become endangered on their own.
Mm. Right.
But yes, we should preserve species wherever possible.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Absolutely.
And if I could do something about it, I would. But I really can't. So I'm just going to sit here and look pretty for 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours?
Yep!
Okay. Well, you look pretty all the time in my personal opinion. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yes, my Krysta and my Laura both look very pretty all the time.
Aw, thank you, dear.
Well, thank you. Not in my best looking thing right now, but alright.
So, would you like to hear some spooky stories?
I
about
have
love?
no choice. I have no choice.
Well, no, you have a choice. We just hope that it's to stay with us.
Ooh, speaking of hagfish, learned a fact about them listening to No Such Thing as a Fish. But you know, hagfish will, once they eat something to help them digest it, they'll sort of tie a knot in themselves and then they'll just move the knot down, which sort of constricts everything inside them. Yeah, I know. Yummy, right? So, this first story comes from a site called West Virginia Ghosts. And I'm reading this just as the person wrote it. I do not know how real or true any of these are. I would suggest that the folklore I will read later, probably less true, but these, I don't know. So, it was 1995, and I was 16 and had my first boyfriend. I'll call him James. James was 18 and had a 77 Charger and took me out to the Valentines dance at our high school. We had fun, and James promised to have me home at 10. We said our goodbyes at the dance and headed home. We got stuck by a wreck, and we were running a little late. As we approached Webb Road, it got so foggy we slowed down and thought we saw car lights pulled off to the side of the road. In the road stood a girl in a pink, old-fashioned looking dress with a crown on it and what looked like blood all over her dress. A guy was laying on the ground. James pulled above them and jumped out. As I opened my door, I heard James say, "Where'd they go? What happened?" I approached the end of the car where James stood, and the other car was gone, and so were the people. We got back into our car and were confused. We never said a word till we got to my driveway, and James said, "Was that real? Were we dreaming?" We never told anyone about that night until a few years later, after the internet was big, and I found an article about a wreck in that area on Valentine's Day. The boy wrecked and was decapitated, and the girl lived, but wound up in an asylum and later committed suicide. I think I will never forget that Valentine's night.
That's spooky, but I'm with you. I don't know that I believe that one specifically.
I don't either. I believed it right up to the point of the asylum.
Yeah, that kind of goes a little too beyond the cheese scale.
Yeah, I would guess about 80s or so, the asylum stopped being quite such a thing for, things like that. Like, oh, it was a horrible wreck, I had to go to the asylum. That's like a 50s thing, maybe early 60s. But after that, it really stopped being kind of a thing. Probably because the medical profession became so expensive. That's just a guess, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Me three.
Now, this next story I found on Reddit. So I really can't speak to whether it's true or not.
I really don't think it is, because most things on Reddit are BS, but okay. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that was her out loud voice.
Yes, it was. You guys ready?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. It was Valentine's Day, and I wasn't with a girl, having lost my ex to a guy on a college football team some months back. However,
fricker.
I was not about to let a little thing like being single put the kibosh on my Valentine's Day celebration. kibosh. I believe I'm saying that right. Kibosh.
Kibosh.
Okay. I hit a couple of bars looking for a love connection or even a like connection, but had no luck. I danced with a couple of pretty girls, but it felt like I was desperate and just going through the motions. I stopped at a restaurant, got some things to go, and headed back to home, determined to celebrate Valentine's Day eating decent Italian food and watching something scary on Netflix. It was then I noticed a blonde girl in an old-fashioned dress walking along the side of the road. It was cold out, like it almost always is in Chicago in February, and I could not believe that she was in such a slight dress. I pulled over and offered her a ride to wherever it was she was going. She began to give me directions in an almost emotionless tone. I offered her my jacket and said she must be cold. She thanked me and said she was always cold as I hung my jacket over her shoulders. It had begun to get quite foggy out, which made the trip seem surreal, like we were the only two people in an alien world. Suddenly she told me to stop the car. I did, and I saw her get out. I was looking for a house, but all I saw was a cemetery. She was obscured momentarily by the fog, and she vanished. I ran after her to find her, but all I found was my jacket folded neatly on the ground in front of the cemetery. It was then I realized that I had a brief date with Resurrection Mary. I graduated from college a couple of years later, and I returned home to the Central Valley in California, but every Valentine's Day, I think about that encounter and a chill goes through me. I touched her in my car, and she felt as real and solid as I do.
Great. Well, I think I've heard this somewhere before.
I think it's a song.
Well, I've heard of Resurrection Mary, but most people who know anything about the internet have. And eventually we'll probably wind up doing a show on her.
Sure.
I mean, she's a ghost that's been seen in Chicago for 80 years now, something like that.
Oh.
The story goes, and I doubt there's any truth to it, but the story goes that this woman was out on a date, dancing. Boyfriend goes to take her home. They get in a wreck. She passes away in the wreck, but they still see her walking along Archer Avenue. I believe it's Archer. I think it's Archer Avenue. From now and again. And when people pick her up to take her home, she either just vanishes out of the car or she gets out at the cemetery and disappears there. So, do I believe this one? I believe it more than the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if I fully believe it, but there's nothing in it that screams fake to me, you know? I mean, the end is a little cliched, but that's how all the stories with her end almost, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
So, I'll say I give it 50-50.
Honestly, if she's actually like that, like, she's actually nice, I don't mind her too much.
Right.
Well, I've never heard of her being not nice. It just, she gets picked up, she gets taken down the road a pace, she disappears out of the car, or she gets out of the car, and, you know, you realize, wait, that's a cemetery, not a house. That's really it. She's just trying to get home. And I think it's delightfully creepy without being threatening in any way.
Right. Sends you a little chill up your spine.
Now, I looked for this story for a while because there's a lot of versions of it. It's a folk tale, so there's almost certainly no truth to it.
Like most folk tales, yeah.
But it is a fascinating story. Now, the version I found was Charles Perrault's version. A wealthy man, wishing to wed, turns his attention to the two beautiful young daughters of his neighbor, a widow. Now, this gentleman is this wealthy guy. He's older, he has a long beard, and it's blue in color. So most people just call him Bluebeard. And neither of the girls wants to marry him because of his ugly blue beard and the fact that he's old. Well, he invites the girls to a party that he throws at his estate. And so the girls see how wealthy he is. He's got this huge spread of food and all these toys and coins he's giving away to kids. And just so one of the girls just becomes enamored of the fact that he's so wealthy and decides to agree to offer him her hand in marriage.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
If somebody ever uses you for wealth or something like that, or looks or anything, don't get all broken down about it. If you get broken down about it, that just shows how weak you are to other people, and they are going to try to take advantage of you.
Nice.
And if you are alone this Valentine's Day, please listen to this episode and let me remind you that we care for you and we respect you. Thank you.
So,
she's a good kid.
She is
her.
Yeah, well, you did a good job with this one. I tried, but, I'm sure all the goodness came from your side.
No comment.
So, she gets married to Bluebeard, and, of course, once they're wed, she becomes what they call the mistress of the household.
Well, sure.
Basically just means that she gets to run the house when husband's not home. And Bluebeard travels for work quite a bit.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bluebeard calls his wife to him, tells him that he has business calls to make and he'll be gone on a long journey.
Oh.
He gives her the keys of his house, tells her where he keeps, money if she needs anything for servants or food or whatever, and then gives her, the keys to the house. And he says that she can unlock any door except for one, and that's the closet at the end of the hall. And it's the tiniest key on the ring. It's a brass key. Mm-hmm. Do not unlock that door.
Mm.
Why would you tell her what key it was?
That's how that happens.
Well, okay. There is a thing in these stories, and it's actually in lots of stories, where you tell somebody not to do something, and then that person specifically does the thing you told them not to. Mm-hmm. And I think it may just be a thing with people, but if you look back, like in the story of the Garden of Eden,
yep,
God says don't. And Eve and Adam say, don't what? And he says, don't eat the fruit off the tree of knowledge. And they're like, okay, I didn't even know we had a tree of knowledge. We do, and don't eat anything off of it. And so they wait till God turns his back, or whatever it is God did back in the day that made him not pay attention. And then they run to the tree, and they eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And they mess everything up for everybody for all time thereafter. But it's the same kind of thing. In these stories, there comes a moment where somebody tells the main character, don't. And they go, don't what? Don't do this thing. And then they don't waste any time in going to do the thing they're not supposed to do.
Well, there's Dad's rant about doing things you're not supposed to.
That's the thing.
Well, look, kids are going to misbehave, whatever. I'm just talking about in these stories, there always seems to be that sort of moment of, don't do this. Okay. And then they turn around and do that. And then they wonder why they're in trouble.
Yep, you're right.
Perfect explanation. Sweet, no.
So, the young wife, once Bluebeard is gone, she's trying to ignore the door. She's she's cleaning and whatever, but she's got maids and servants, so she doesn't have a lot to do. This is in the days before Netflix and chill, so she doesn't have TV or Netflix or radio or anything like that. So, she's got books.
Right.
And
sit down and read the book.
And while you're sitting down reading the book, that thing goes off in your head, hey, I got that key, and there's that door I'm not supposed to open, and nobody's here to stop me. So, she finally goes, okay, I'm just going to go, I'm going to lock the door, I'm going to open it, look real quick, close it again. So, she goes to the door, she uses the key, she unlocks it. As soon as she unlocks it, she hears the key say, ouch. She pulls the key out, there's blood coming off the key. The key is bleeding.
The key itself is bleeding?
The key itself is bleeding. She opens the door. Oh my God, giant pool of blood in the room. All these bodies of women up on the walls. All of them without their heads, because their heads are being held in their arms.